Chapter 5. A Love Beyond Magic. Months had passed since Aaron had given up his wings, and the glow of the fairy realm had faded from his skin. Now he was fully human, living a simple life with Lila. They had moved into a cozy cottage on the edge of the woods, close to the clearing where they had first met. The magic of that place still lingered in the air, but now their world was grounded in the ordinary rhythms of life. For Aaron, the transition to being human was not easy. He had lived for centuries, effortlessly navigating the fairy realm where everything was alive with magic. Now, the human world felt strange. He was bound by time, by hunger, by fatigue, things he had never experienced before. One morning, as Aaron stumbled out of bed, his body ached from the day's work. He had taken up farming, using the skills he had honed in the fairy realm to cultivate the earth. But it wasn't the same. In the Fae world, a touch of his hand could make plants grow in an instant. Now, it required back-breaking labor. "Your shoulders look stiff," Lila said, noticing his discomfort, as she set a steaming cup of tea on the table. Aaron smiled at her, though his face showed a trace of exhaustion. "I'm not used to this, being tired." Lila chuckled softly and walked over, placing her hands on his shoulders and massaging them gently. "You'll get used to it. We all do." He sighed, leaning into her touch, though he couldn't help but miss the effortless energy he once had. "Sometimes I forget how easy everything was before. How a single breath could bring life to the earth." He looked out the window toward their small garden, where the rows of crops they'd planted were still growing, slowly, patiently, without the help of his fairy magic. "You were never just your magic," Lila said softly, kissing his temple. "You're still Aaron. You'll always be Aaron to me." He turned to face her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "I know, Lila. I've never regretted my choice. It's just different." And it was. Aaron had taken to farming and gardening, which came naturally to him, even without his fairy powers. He loved working with the earth, feeling the dirt between his fingers, watching the slow, steady growth of the plants. There was something grounding about it, something that felt real in a way magic never had. But there were times when he wished, just for a moment, that he could summon the old powers, just to see the flowers bloom instantly, or to heal the land with a touch. One afternoon, as he and Lila were working in the garden together, Aaron paused, looking at the small patch of soil he was tending. "Back in the fairy realm, I could have made this entire garden bloom in an instant," he said, a wistful tone in his voice. Lila looked up from where she was kneeling, planting seeds in neat rows. She wiped her forehead and smiled. But would it have meant as much? The way it is now, we get to watch it grow day by day. We get to nurture it with our own hands. Aaron smiled, a warm, genuine smile, and nodded. "You're right. There's something beautiful about watching it happen slowly. It feels more alive, in a way." He crouched down beside her, helping her plant the seeds, and as they worked together, Aaron realized that this slow, steady life had its own kind of magic. As the seasons passed, their love deepened, and soon they decided to marry. The ceremony was simple. Just them, the woods, and the village they had grown to love. There were no grand fairy spells, no otherworldly lights or shimmering wings, but their vows were spoken with the deepest sincerity, and that was all the magic they needed. A year after their marriage, their first child was born, a boy named Kale. He had Lila's bright eyes and Aaron's gentle nature. Holding him in his arms for the first time, Aaron felt a love so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He had lived for centuries, seen worlds beyond imagination, but nothing compared to the feeling of holding his newborn son. "I never thought I could feel this way," Aaron whispered, his voice choked with emotion as he rocked Cale in his arms. Leela, lying beside him, smiled through her own tears. "You're going to be a wonderful father," she said softly, reaching out to touch his arm. Aaron nodded, though he still couldn't fully believe that this was his life now. A family, a home, a world where he belonged. As Cale grew, Aaron took joy in teaching him about the woods, about plants, and the wonders of nature. Though he no longer had his fairy magic, Aaron's love for the natural world remained, and he passed that love down to his son. Together, they would walk through the woods, Aaron showing Cale how to tend the garden, how to care for the earth. 2 years later, their second child was born, a daughter named Elowin. She had her father's soft, golden hair and her mother's curious spirit. From the moment she was born, Aaron felt his heart swell with even more love. His family was his world now, and the life they had built together felt like a gift. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Leela cradled Elowin in her arms while Cale played with wooden toys on the floor. Aaron, watching them with a soft smile, turned to Lila. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if things were different? If I hadn't given up my wings?" Lila looked at him, her eyes filled with warmth and love. "Sometimes I think about it," she admitted, "but I wouldn't change anything. Not for the world." Aaron nodded, his gaze drifting to the fire. "I used to think my wings were everything," he said softly, "that they were what made me who I was. But I've realized something. They weren't. I was more than that, even back then. And now I have you, and Cale, and Elowin. I have a family. That's worth more than any magic." Lila smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "You've always had magic, Aaron. It's just different now." He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. "And I wouldn't trade it for anything." The fire crackled softly in the hearth, the warmth of their home wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. Outside, the woods whispered gently in the night, the same woods where their love had first bloomed under the moonlight. Though Aaron sometimes missed his fairy realm and the effortless magic that had once been his, he knew in his heart that he had made the right choice. The love he shared with Lila, the family they had built together, these were the things that truly mattered. They didn't need wings or spells or enchantments. Their love was the greatest magic of all, and it was more than enough to fill a lifetime. And so, as the years passed, Aaron and Lila's love continued to grow, as strong and steady as the earth beneath their feet. They faced their future together, knowing that no matter what challenges life might bring, they would always have each other. And in the end, that was the only magic they would ever need.